Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I would like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Carrie Linklater. I'm your chairperson today. And I am joined on the board by Cynthia Stevens and Mr. Richard Whitbread. And our city assessor is Mr. Merrick Froelich. And our admin secretary is Ms. Michelle Neathen. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with your order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible, and as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. You can swear everybody in. Thank you.
State your full name, please.
Sure, Paul.
Do you swear that the evidence about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Do you affirm or swear? Sir? Can you state your full name, please? Do you swear that the evidence about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good morning, Mr. Stelsky. And good morning, Mr. Froelich. If you could start us off on 2073 Logan Avenue.
Yep, sure thing. File number is 193024. Roll number is 0709247500. Address is 2073 Logan Avenue. The initial value for this property was $8,243,000. During my analysis, I felt comfortable with making a recommendation of $7,596,000.
Mr. Satowski, are you accepting this recommendation?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to continue.
Yep, for sure. We have one building. Year build is 2002. Wall height is 28 feet. We have a leasable area of 67,773. If we look at page 2 of my brief, you can see some external pictures of the property. As you can see, it's a nice new modern building. And my recommendation was that I felt our rents were a bit high, just as a general rule, so that's why I felt comfortable with making a recommendation on that value. On page 4, I have a picture of some of the space that we have listed here and where it's located at. So that's on page 4. On the top of page 5, you can see, so when you're looking at Route 90 and Logan, it's on the west side of that, just past the Shell gas station. There's a Shell gas station and car wash there, just for the landmark. What I have here is it's just some pictures that was on a recent listing on it. And just the breakdown. This is post-reference. but it's just that, and I'm not putting any weight on it because my rent's actually lower than what they're asking for. But I use this just to include the breakdown of what component is office, what component is warehouse space. The building is a multi-tenanted industrial use building, is an excellent location off Route 90, Winnipeg's busiest north-south corridor, creates great access to all major routes across the city. Just out to the area is the St. James Industrial Park, featuring a wide variety of industrial uses, including manufacturing, distribution. And there's just an overview of some of the spaces that are available for this property. Page 8 shows the picture that we have for it here, of where it's located at. And the bottom of page 8 shows just the actual layout of the property. Property owner is Artist REIT, and they have been compliant with regards to filling out income and expense mailers. And we shared with them many times before, there is both the rental income and the recovery income. So if you look at the recovery income, they're getting a recovery income for operation common, property taxes, management fees. So those are all very prevalent in the mailer. And on the bottom of page 10 is just showing some of the sample leases that we have here from the income expense mailer.
Sorry, what page did you say?
Page 10. So just page 10 shows all the leases. So 725, 675, 850, 625, and 795, which is why I felt comfortable with the rent that I used. Page 12 shows the actual leases that are in place for this property. And it's that range of, that's been shown on the mailer. So initially, I'm at page 13 right now, and just give me. So, as you can see on page 13, we did a variety of rents ranging from $7.58 to $8.33. With a blended rate of $7.85. When I looked at the actuals and I looked at what we had as a model here, that's why I felt comfortable with using the $7.25 rent for this property, which is what my recommendation was based off of.
So right across the board?
What's that?
Right across the board, 725?
Yeah, $7.25. I have the work up here, if you guys want to look at it. And so that was the basis of my recommendation. We're showing expenses at 2%. Shortfall 3.75, net operating income of 494, 6005, and we have a cap rate of 6%. Cap rate of 6% is very fair based on comparables. This is a newer building in a good location, and that's why I felt comfortable with my value of $7,596,000. What we have here on page 14 is just a list of some comparables that I have here. And it's just to show a guideline. So most of my comparables are consisting of their flex warehouses within the area. Century, Dublin, Bowman's Creek, Murray Park. Murray Park is, I think, out in St. James, so that those ones would not be as applicable for location, but they are a bit newer buildings. Cap rate studies, page 15. So what we're looking at here is when we're looking at industrial cap rates that we use. So this is a multi-tenanted building. It is a newer building here, right? So it's within 2000. So usually what we've seen with industrial properties, the rents that are newer, like say built in 2000 and afterwards, they usually derive higher rents, and the cap rates are lower. What we have here though is that I felt that our rents were a bit too high, so I made the adjustment there. But I still feel comfortable with the cap rate that we're using because it is a newer building in good condition. And how it shows as a potential person who would like to rent here, I think it shows as a good quality space. Which is why I feel comfortable using this as a multi-tenanted property here at 6%. Page 16 shows our general view with regards to how we justify our cap rate study. As you can see by the cap rate study that we've used on the bottom of page 16, you know, all of our cap rates that were done with the sales dates in 2017, so it's recent data. We've talked about the reasoning behind using our non-recoverable expenses, and with regards to the importance of how we came up with our deductions, where we don't include tenant inducements and leasing commissions, you know, and other factors like that. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind handing your work up?
Oh, of course.
Thank you.
I could just Michelle.
That's okay, Michelle, we can just. Thank you. Mr. Satowski, questions?
So just to confirm, Mr. Froelich, your brief is based on your models, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you're not putting in or very little weight, if any, on the actual rent generated by this property?
No, well, my recommendation's based on what the actuals are and the condition of the building.
So it's based on, so the actuals are 725, that's the average?
No, that's what I felt was a fair value for this type of quality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're asking $9 and $10 for market rents for this property, and I feel that's $725 because on some of the lower leases that we have here, when I looked at when I did my analysis here, you know, there's some lower rents at $675 that was signed in 2015. You know, so I felt comfortable with the values that I've used here.
And with respect to your capitalization rate, you use 6%. So on page 15, your cap rates range from 550 to 980.
Yep.
So you're saying that 6%, that's on the low side, or on the very low side?
Our range is from 5.5 to 9.8. And so when we're at our 20th to 80th percentile, is from 6.43 to 7.8.
6.34.
6.34, pardon me. And so, and the reason why I feel comfortable with the 6% cap rate is for the reasons that I've stated with regards to the condition of the building, the location of where it is. And so, to me, this is a quality property would be indicative of a lower cap rate.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
I'm fine, thank you.
I think my questions are just answered. I just have one question. Because this is a new build, 2002, do you have anything in your notes regarding cost?
The cost of build? Actually, no. I printed out all the notes and everything like that. So I did not do. I did not print out the cost brief.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Satowski, if you could give us your brief.
Thank you. So our brief was based on three fundamental arguments: the rent per square foot, and if you turn to page 3, we use the $7.35 because that was based on our studies. We would like to reinstall the 5% non-recoverable expenses and increase the cap rate to 7%. Now, with respect to the non-recoverable expenses, I'm sure you've heard this argument many times. You need to see the briefs, the orders of the Board of Revision indicating the reinstallation of 5%.
No.
I have tons of orders here.
We're all familiar.
I assumed you would be.
Yes.
So okay. So based on the many orders that have been issued by the Board of Revision, we would like the 5% to be reinstalled. Now, with respect to the rent rate, as you can see on page 3, we're using the $7.35, which is based on the market study, and you could take turn to page 15, which shows the rent comps for flex warehouses, and the average is $7.35. So we're comfortable with the $7.35. I mean, if the board wishes to reduce to $7.25, well, we wouldn't be unhappy with that. And in terms of the cap rate, as you can see on page 3, we asked to have this cap rate increased to 7%. And again, it's based on our study, which is shown on page 16. The average of our cap rate study is 8.29. So we accept the fact that this building is somewhat newer. So we feel that a 7% cap rate would be more appropriate for this building. It's, I mean, it's a bit newer than many other ones, but it's still about 17 years old. And so we feel that a 7% cap rate, as I said, would be more appropriate for this particular building, and it falls right in line with the cap rate study that the city is showing in their brief. We feel that 6% is on the low side, based on our studies, based on the study, other studies. We feel 7% is more appropriate. Also wanted to point out to you that this particular building was an appeal in 2018, and there was a board order which reduced the assessment to $6,931,000, and that order is attached on page 13. And that is my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
So you referenced the 2018 board order. Do you have any macroeconomic indicators that would justify property values going down by $674,000 in value? Because the value you're asking here for today is $6,259,000. It was $6,931,000, and based on my perspective, there hasn't been a drop in industrial properties within the city of Winnipeg.
Well, based on the parameters that I've shown on page 3, with the rental rate of $7.35, non-recoverable expenses of 5%, capitalized rate of 7%, we arrived at a value of $6,259,000.
Just my rec. So on page 15 of your brief, on 1301 Kenniston, are those rents that you've listed here, are those the mid-range, the low range, or the high range of rents on this property?
Those are the actual rents that, as I understand it, that exist.
Okay. Do you know how many properties are listed at 1301 Kenniston?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, it's a large tenanted facility with Terracon, and there's a significant amount of rents there that are significantly higher than what you've stated here today. Question for you. So if we look at the last 5 rents that are most comparable to the subject property, do you know what the average rent is for those properties?
The ones on Logan?
On Logan, yes. Well, and I didn't use the ones above there, so I do apologize. I just used the last ones there, so.
Just a guess on my part, probably near the high 7s.
Okay, that's fair. So if we use the higher rent, which is more reflective of the actual condition, wouldn't a higher cap rate be justified?
Well, I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
So if you're looking at the valuation of a property, if we were using rents that are actually closer to actuals as opposed to what's been stated here, couldn't a higher cap rate be justified with the overall value? So higher rents, higher cap rate would come up with the same value, would it not?
Well, cap rate is based on various factors.
Yeah.
The age of the buildings, condition of the building, land to building ratio, location. There are several factors at least that
So
that
are
go
you,
into cap rate. So we feel that based on the age of the building, it's, as I said, it's about 17, 18 years old. And you say the location is a pretty decent location. I'm not disputing the fact that it's not decent. It's backing onto the railroad track. So every time a train passes, you could hear the trains. You could hear the you could hear the rumbling. So we feel based on the fact that it's an old building, older building, 7%. We feel that is pretty decent cap rate.
so would you, okay, so if in your words, if this is an older building, are there a significant amount of buildings that are newer than 2000 in the marketplace? Like what would you quantify as being a mid-range building and an old building?
Well, I can't tell you how many buildings there are in the marketplace that are newer than this. Based on my experience, there are many buildings that are much older than this particular one. I don't know. I can't tell you how many newer buildings there are.
Okay. So, no other questions. That's fine.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
I'm fine, thanks.
I just want to follow up to one of the questions you were asked previously by the assessor. So your evaluation has the property lower than the previous board order. Now, is there anything going on with this building that would have caused the value to go down in the last?
I'm not aware of anything going on with this building. I'm not aware of any structural issues or any problems. Our value is based on the models that you see on page 3. I don't know what how the board arrived at the decision in 2018. I just included that information
Was it
as
appealed in
reference.
2018? You know?
I'm sorry?
Was it appealed in 2018?
Yes, it was.
It was, okay.
Yes.
So, what they had done there, the board orders on page 13 of Mr. Noblesse's brief, and it shows how they came to the analysis of that.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Satowski, I just have a question regarding page 16 of your brief. With your cap rate study, your properties that are listed, the property at Camille Cease, where exactly is that located?
I could look at my Google Maps.
I can
just
share
can't
that.
remember.
I can share that with you.
Okay, thank you. We're not supposed to use phones, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it's in St. Boniface.
Okay, that's what I thought. And what about 15 Winfield?
That's south part of the city. No, sorry. Mr. Fogg, do you know exactly where that is?
You know what, I can't recall. I actually think it's in the northwest quadrant.
North Dakota, so it's not, it's nearby.
And those buildings are newer, more comparable, certainly not in size, so they're small. Would you not agree the subject property has a better location?
Compared to which one? Waiting?
No, Camille Cease and Winfield, which are the two newer properties that you've got listed on page 16.
Sorry, Winfield. Is Winfield located in Inkster Park?
That's what I thought, but-
I think, I apologize, I just realized
Okay.
it's Friday morning. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all my questions.
I just have
Gentlemen.
a quick summation.
Oh, that's just what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, I didn't ask anything about the cap rate because we went through our little manager spiel or whatever, so I do have some rebuttal information with regards to the cap rate that I'll be sharing later on. I just want to share that with you. But I feel comfortable with the value that I presented here today of the, I don't have it here right now, my rent is, yeah, $7,596,000. Thank you.
we'll move on to 100 Omens Creek. And whenever you're ready, Mr. Froelich.
Yep, for sure. File number is 194061. Roll number is 13095427500. Address is 100 Omens Creek. Owner is Artis REIT, and the assessed value that we have for this property is $2,668,000. Building was built in 1980. Wall height is 28 feet. We have a leasable area of 50,000 square feet. And I feel comfortable with this as assessed value here. So there's a couple things to look at when dealing with this property. It is a bit older property, and you're seeing pictures on page 2. You're also seeing the location of the property. So all these properties are in the same general area on page 3. We've got an overhead shot of it. So what we've done is with this property is during the last appeal, there was a 15-1 signed on it. This building has significant foundation issues. So I've never been in this building. One of my colleagues has been into it. So we acknowledge the fact that there is foundation issues with this building here. So what we've done to address this issue is we have reduced the rent. So if you look on page 5, there's a note in our system that says this property has issues with foundation and sinking walls. The building was not built to withstand industrial use and has been chronologically repaired. Adjustment with the cap rate should reflect this when the property is reviewed. So what we've done with regard to this is, like, when we look at an overall market valuation of the property, we're looking at the macro figures of what's happening in industrial property rates. Our model has said average industrial properties have increased by 17%. So what we've done here is, you'll notice here that the initial rent for this property on page 5 was $3.70. It's now $5. That's listed on here, on this mailer here where it's going up. And so our model rent that we're using for this property is $4.05. We've done that to be mindful of the fact. So it's like 20% less than the actual. So we kept all of our other parameters the same. So when you're looking at the general overall view of a property, you're always looking at market rents, cap rates, vacancy. So those are important indicators. So you can't have it both ways. So we're going to make adjustments on one side of them, and if we're going to look at the other macro factors that are happening in the Winnipeg marketplace with regards to industrial properties, I'm comfortable with the value that we had here. So what we had done is the 2018 value where we signed a 15-1 was at $2,467,000, and now we're at $2,868,000. What I have here on page 6 is that the Artis REIT is graded completed income and expense mailers. Once again, I'm showing the rent, I'm showing the recoveries that they have for operatings and common areas, property taxes and whatnot. But what's interesting, sometimes Artis REIT mailers are very, very confusing, because in this situation here right now, they're showing an income of $581,000, which is really high for this type of property. However, in the 2015 mailer, they're showing a net profit of $198,000 for this property. And I'll get back to why this is important. So when we're looking at this information here, it's a single tenanted building here. What they reported is they reported a rent in the $5 range. And as you can see here on our subject property leases on page 8, they state $5.25. We are using $4.05. So on page 9, what we've done here is we have 50,400 square feet, $4.05. Come up with a potential rent of $204,120, using our vacancy at 3.5%, because that's market vacancy. What is the actual vacancy on this building? It's 0%, but we've got to be mindful of what happens in the marketplace, and there always has to be some vacancy. So the department doesn't ask for 0 vacancy when it has vacancy, but we're always trying to be mindful of that. Looking at expenses and shortfall, we come up with a net operating income of $186,421. In the 2015 mailer, which I have access to here, they're showing $198. So 2015, they're showing $198. Here we have $186. using a cap rate of 6.5% because this building's older. When we looked at the last property where it was built in 2000, we had a 6% cap rate, same area. Older building, older cap rate, 6.5%. So that's why I feel comfortable with the value of $2,868,000. I got some comparables that are in the neighborhood, close to similar size. Our subject property is a bit larger, but I wanted to get properties that were within the range and that were in the neighborhood. And page 10 concludes what I was sort of discussing of. Why do I feel comfortable with? So if we use actual rents that they're paying here, so what I've done here is we have the 50,400 square feet. If I use the 525 that they reported here, with the rest of our parameters at 3.5%, shortfall 375, other at 2%, we come up with a net operating income of 243. But with an 8.5% cap rate, we come up with close to the same value. So when I'm looking at our analysis here of what we've done, you can't pick and choose parameters which are convenient to justify your position. You got to factor in all factors that take place. Here, what we have here is we say, sure, I have no problems using the actual rent that they reported. I'll use the 525, but I'll use a higher cap rate than what's been requested, which is why I feel the value that I presented here is fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Satowski?
Yeah, well, Mr. Fullick, I mean, on the one hand, you're using models, your models, or your market rents. So how can you argue on the one hand that the rent for this particular property might be higher than what the market rent is? Therefore, the cap, we're gonna make adjustments by adjusting cap rate. I mean, you either use your models or you use the actuals. But you have admitted that you're using models. You're using your models and you're using your market rent to arrive at value. How can you make these arguments?
Very easily.
I don't understand.
You look at all three factors when it comes to market valuation of the property.
You're using models.
So, we do use models because we do a mass appraisal system. We cannot go to 30,000 commercial properties and do site-specific valuations, which is why we do models. However, when we come to this hearing here for this venue, to justify our model, we've made an adjustment here. We've used a model, but we've made a site-specific adjustment where we looked at the rent and we're saying, what can we do to justify, to reduce the rent here, to justify the issues with foundation? So I could have adjusted the rent, I could have adjusted the cap rate. You can't pick and choose. This is not a what we've done here for this property. We've made this into poor condition to derive the condition of the building here. If it was an average condition with regards, average condition with average rents, I could guarantee you it would be $4.11.
Mr. Frolick, you mentioned the $4.05 that you're using as the rent here. That's the market rent.
That's the model rent.
Model rent.
Using poor condition.
Okay, so you're using on the you're using model rent or the market rent. You're using $4.05, and that is the market rent.
That is a model rent for a poor condition building with significant foundation issues.
You didn't say that.
What I also could have done, Les, to hear you out here, what I also could have done with their model is what I could have done is I could have changed the income quality of the cap rate. And I could have used the actual rent of $525. We could have made a manual adjustment. And then what I could have done is I could have adjusted the cap rate to be significantly higher than 6.5 to be mindful of the condition of the issues with the foundation. What we're looking at here is we're looking at an increase which is not very significant to be reflective of the actual conditions. You just can't pick and choose.
Well, that's what you're doing.
But the point is that we're being mindful of it because I'm picking and choosing to justify my position.
Well, you just said a moment ago that you can't pick and choose. Now you're saying that you're picking and choosing to justify your position.
I've provided here two positions here to justify why I believe the assessment's fair. When you're looking at three main indicators of value, so I ain't picking which ones are going to be most favorable for me to lower the assessed value of the property. Your position here is lower than what it was in 2018. That was a signed 15-1 agreement that you've agreed upon.
Sorry, what was that 15-1? What was the value?
The value in 2018 was $2,467,000. And if I look at your brief here, you're asking for $2.2 million. This is a property that's owned by Artist REIT. They're an organization that knows what they're doing. There was new lease for this building here at 525.
I'm sorry, you don't
Okay.
know the organization, you don't know the people in it, so you can't say that, you know.
Artist REIT is a national company that has
It is.
significant
Okay.
players.
Yeah,
Did you have another question?
I do, yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
but this is again regarding, you know, the argument about models and about actuals. Because, you know, when we look at, on page 9 of your brief, all this is modeled. You're saying that everything here is based on your models, the vacancy loss, the expenses, the cap rate, the rent. That is based on your models. Is that correct? So, but you're saying, I think, if I understand, you're saying that the rent that you use of $4.05, you selected that value, is that correct? You kept
Do
everything
I
else?
have anything else to add here? Because I think I've stated my position
Yeah,
quite
I
clearly.
agree.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, because I have nothing else to add.
I know, thank you. Mr. McCray?
questions, thanks.
I just, if, I understand what you're saying your argument is, but if a building's in poor condition, like just from a, I'm just trying to logically get my head around this. Why would you adjust the rent rather than the cap? Because the cap is a number that a buyer is gonna look at. They're gonna look at whether they have to fix the building. And obviously they're attaining rent. I mean, as a renter, if I don't have to pay for it,
Yeah.
what do I care if the building was sinking? If, as long as it's not affecting my business. So I'm just wondering why, I guess I'm just trying to get logistically, I understand that you were trying to reflect that the building was in poor condition, I get it, but to me, it just, doing it in the rent rather than the cap, I'm just.
I didn't do the review process for this property in 2020. This is one way to look at the valuation process.
Okay.
And that's why I showed the position here. If we use the actual rent, so if a buyer was looking
I
at
know
the
you were
actual
saying that you
rent,
could come to the same amount if you did it the other way around, but so
Exactly.
it just to me logistically, it doesn't make sense.
I
The
can't
building's in
justify
poor
who did the
condition.
review
All
of
right.
it, but that's the approach that another person could take to come up with the same value.
Okay, and so the actual amount that the model had come up with was $5 a square foot, and it was lowered to $4.05
No,
per condition?
I don't know what the actual value is, because what we had done
Because
with
it
the
says, I
model,
was wondering what this $5 here was.
that's from the mailer, that's from the tenant.
On page 5?
On page 5, yeah.
Oh, I see,
So the
okay,
page 5
sorry,
is
I
what we
thought
get
that was
from
a
Artist
model.
REIT,
Okay,
and
sorry.
they provide great, you know.
I misunderstood when you
Yep.
said that, okay. All right, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Froelich, pictures on page 4 of your brief.
Yep.
The top picture, is that interior wall?
That's what I would look to be. I guess there's a portion of this building here that is in that condition. I haven't inspected this building, I haven't been in there. So these are the issues that were found on it, and this is what we have on file.
Okay, so, but I think you had stated that somebody from your department had inspected the building?
Yes, they have.
And do you know when that was?
Okay, so these are the notes that we have here. 2019 appeal with Mr. Story, inspected to find issues with foundation, holes in the cinder blocks. Building has issues with standing industrial use and must be constantly repaired. Cap rate should be adjusted, okay? There was a 51 agreement side using the model rents where we adjusted the cap rate. So what we had done in,
And I'm sorry, the cap rate was what?
was 7.75 that we used, but it was initially 6%. So our model generated at the time, and what we need to look at here is, and this is an issue, because initially the model was at 6% and we increased it to be reflective of the rent here right now. So in the review process, and I guess we did two things. We adjusted the rent manually by changing it to poor, and she adjusted the cap rate for the 2019 appeal, right? And so what we had done is then for 2020, we're looking at this property and like.
Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna, I
Yeah.
just wanted to know, what's the date when this was inspected?
Oh, I'm sorry. 2018, October 25th, 2018.
Sorry, so that you were talking about 7.75 cap and using which rents now? Were those the,
I don't have the 15-1 agreement in front of me right now. My guess is it would be significantly higher than the $4.
And this building, to the best of your knowledge, is completely rented?
Yeah,
There's
it's
no
a
vacancy
single,
issues?
yeah.
Single tenant building.
Yeah.
Okay. Out of curiosity, because it states on page 5 of your brief that it's not built to withstand industrial use, do you know what's going on in this building?
You know what? This is where define industrial use. So can it handle heavy manufacturing? Probably not. Does it meet the needs of the tenant? It does.
Okay. Thank you, that's all my questions.
And I guess then if it didn't, then they would have re-signed a lease, right?
Mr. Satowski, if we could have your brief.
Thank you. As was mentioned, this particular building is in a very sad state. I'm going to refer you to some of the pictures that I took, starting on page 7. You'll see the exterior walls not in very good shape. Go on to page 8. Above the loading docks, you see the stonework is weathered. There are holes and water's getting through the walls. Page 13. You'll see cracks in the wall. And page 14 and 15, you see the again the walls being really weathered, and as you said, water has a habit of entering through these walls. So it's in a pretty sad state. Now, our arguments are twofold. We accept the rent of $4.05 as the market rent for this type of building, and we would like to have the 5% for non-recoverable expenses reinstalled based on the arguments that you've heard a million times, and because this building is experiencing so many structural issues, which Mr. Frolick has admitted to knowing, and the department obviously is aware of those structural problems, we feel that a cap rate of 8% would be more suitable much more suitable to use in arriving at value. So again, just to recap, the pictures show that there are problems with this building. Mr. Frolick has indicated that as well. The department is aware of that. So we feel that the page 3, the model that you see there on the right-hand side is the one that we feel that the board should accept, using the 5% non-recoverable expenses and a cap rate of 8%. And that 8% is as mentioned earlier, that our cap rate study shows an average of 8.29%, and that's still within that average. And based on our workup here, we feel that a value of $2,207,000 would be more representative of this type of building. So we're asking that the board reduce the assessment to $2,207,000. Now, we heard evidence that in 2018 the department reached an agreement to reduce the assessment to $2,467,000. and we're asking for a lower assessment because this particular building, it continues to have these structural issues, and in our opinion, these structural issues are getting worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Did you inspect the property?
I wasn't inside the property, I walked around the property.
Okay.
I'm
So,
the one that took the pictures that you see.
okay, so if you were at the property and it's a client of yours, why didn't you inspect the property?
Fortunately, I was there on a day that was a holiday, I think.
Okay, fair enough. Would interior pictures been beneficial with regards to show the poor condition of the quality?
Well, I mean, you show some interior
Yeah.
pictures in your briefs.
But it's, you know, so, sometimes you use actuals rents that are required here. How come you didn't use actual rents in your analysis
When
today?
do we use actual rents?
And different appeals that you, well, sometimes we use our parameters, and like in this situation here, the actual rent's $5.25.
We've used the market rent of $4.05 because we.
Well, that's a
we
model
agreed-
rent.
Well, or model rent, we agreed that that particular rate should be used. The actual rate of $5.25 was a lease that, it was an amount that was arrived at between the tenant and the owner, because the tenant, the tenant was bidding for city work. They're a recycling company. They were bidding for city work. They were moving out. In order to comply with the parameters of the city, they needed to stay at this building, and they agreed to that $5.25. Otherwise, they would have moved out.
So you,
But in short, that rent is being paid by that tenant. That's not the model rent. We're accepting the $4.05.
yeah, so, but you haven't provided any comparables here showing a $4 rent in your analysis, are you, in your brief?
I'm not arguing.
Okay, but I'm just an observation.
We accept that amount.
Okay, even though they're, I guess, what is it? Cap rates. How familiar are you with your cap rate information that you provided on page 19?
How
How familiar are you
this?
with it? You know, like, are you familiar with a lot of the properties that are discussed here?
I'm
Because,
not familiar with all of the properties, no.
okay, I have one here that I'd like to share for rebuttal information. Before I start this, how come in your cap rate analysis, you weren't able to find any sales that were like closer to the reference date in 2017? You only have one here in 2016, and for that property, for the 1375, 1385 Richard property, did you know that was a family sale?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so.
I'm just gonna ask Mr. Froelich, before you get into your rebuttal evidence, I just want the panel to finish asking questions.
Oh, okay,
It's
no,
just-
no problem, that's
Because then
perfectly.
everything
Okay,
just
then,
becomes a
yeah,
schmozzle.
and I understand here as well, okay, because, then I'll just ask a couple more questions on his cap rate study then?
Okay,
Before.
without going
without
into your
going back.
rebuttal? Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine,
okay.
thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chairperson, may I just have a few more words with respect to cap rate studies, because we have two more cap rate studies included in our brief. There's a Cushman and Wakefield study. that-
Okay, well, I think Mr. Froelich is gonna ask you about the cap rate study, about your cap rate.
Okay. So, on 555 Camille System, do you have any information on that property with regards to the appraisal value done on that?
No, I don't.
Okay. Did you, oh, so you're not familiar with the cap rate that was used for that sale of that property? On the appraisal report?
I'm sorry, you're not,
So on the appraisal report for that property.
you have an appraisal for that property?
Yeah, it was at the $6.2 million sale was, was 6.67 on the.
Yeah, that
appraisal
document
report.
with you?
I have the summary of that document, and this is just the information that we have with regards to some of our properties on here. And I'm under oath, so. With, do you know how the cap rate of, so you have a cap rate here of 879 Hewayton at 6%, would that not be similar to the subject property in terms of location? Like 879.
Okay, but again, there is factors that go into determining what the cap rate should be, right? I mean,
Okay.
not just location.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is your cap rate on 879, 1968 building. It's a larger building, and you're reporting a 6% cap rate. So we've got a property that's, close, it's significantly bigger, almost twice the size.
Mr. Froelich, I'm sure you know that, if you look at just one single individual sale or one single individual property, that doesn't give you a total picture. That's why you have to look
Okay.
at as many as you can.
Yeah, but when you got outliers here that are not comparable to the subject property, would you say an industrial warehouse that was built in 1969 on Aikens in the inner city by the railway would be a fair comparable to a property on 100 Omens Creek Boulevard?
We used as much information as we had. We included that information, so you have a whole range of buildings that are included in this report.
There's no other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Whitfield, questions of Mr. Satowski?
Whitfield?
Did call you Whitfield.
You did call me
I
Whitfield?
did.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair.
It's your alias.
Brett. All good things.
One question. I note a sale in 2007 of $23,341,000 in the evidence somewhere. I think maybe it was in the cities.
Yep.
Is it safe to assume that would be part of a bigger parcel? One question. And the second question would be, if so, are you able to break out the value of this property as part of that?
Mr. Ritter, I really can't talk about that. I don't know what that transpired back.
You have no information?
I have no knowledge of that.
May I redirect to the city now?
Yes.
Do you
14
have
different properties.
14 properties?
Yeah, 14 different properties.
Did you have something assigned to this property?
You know what? No, we did not, just because the large scale of it was 2007. So you're essentially looking at 11 years away from the reference date. If we look at market evidence, that probably value of that, if there was a portfolio started here, it probably would have doubled. It probably would, closer to 60 million.
But that would be something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, but yeah, it's automated when the sales take place, so, I do have it listed here, but my guess is a lot of the portfolio that was a part of that sale is what we're discussing today.
No guessing.
Yeah.
Facts only, thanks.
I'm speculating.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, no further questions.
So, you, in your brief, you have taken the lower rent and then applied a higher cap. Correct?
I'm sorry, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, it's not that we agree that is the market rent. We use the market rent, we accept that fact.
Well, that's the market rent the city put on for a building in poor condition. So you've.
Well, we don't know that.
Like
Mr. Froelich said that is the market rent.
That was.
Well, he said in evidence that that's. So what's, I guess my question is, what's happening here? Does it seem to you like this has been, the condition of the building is being double counted here, given the rent and the cap rate? I could see the cap rate, perhaps if you had, because if you look at your own rent comps, most of them are higher than that. And building is achieving higher than that, correct?
The building is achieving higher, again, because of what I had indicated, that they were ready to move out. However, because they were bidding for city contract, they had to stay in that building, and they accepted a bit of higher, somewhat of a higher rent.
But both your rent, in your workup, both your rent and your cap reflect the condition of the building. Is that correct?
The rent of $4.05, in our opinion, reflects the market rent, and the higher cap rate reflects the fact that it reflects the condition of the building.
Okay, thanks, that's all.
Thank you. Just one question, Mr. Stikowski. Any discussion at all or information on cost to fix the building?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay, thank you. If you would like to give us your...
Yep, for sure. If you take a look, so if you look at the sale of 100 Paquin, the sale's almost 4 years away
You're
from
on
the
page
roof.
19?
I'm looking
Yes,
at
sorry,
Les's
honest.
page 19, and
You're
then
on
my
page
rebuttal,
19 of the
and my rebuttal
appellant's
brief, yeah.
right.
So what we have here is, so this is a Collier's, the front page here, it was what was presented by Collier's for the 2016 appeal, because because it's so far away. So we had assessed value of $9,013,000 for this property. And to work up here, there's a net operating income of $515,000, that brought $515,549, right? The applicant used an 8.5% cap rate. But we're showing a sale here, which would encompass, okay, the period, the reference period that would have used to do the analysis. Because what happens here, the 2016 assessment would have collected data from April 1st, 2014, using mailers from 2013, 2012, and 2011. In the analysis that was done by Mr. Neufeld, he reported a net operating income of $515,549, but there's a sale of $7.6 million. So what happens if we use the sale or the net operating income of $515,549 divided by a cap rate of 0.0678. We come up with $7,603,967. So on the next page, here I'm just going to read the last paragraph. The agent in his brief used the 2016 assessment of the subject property calculated by the subject's net operating income of $515, using the stated net operating income divided by the stated sale price. The cap rate would be 6.78%. Given that the cap rates have been compressed slightly between 2014 and 2016, it's why we use the 6.5% cap rate for the property at the time. A 6.5% cap rate on the actual sale using the applicant, and the person who did this is accredited Appraiser Institute of Canada member. And what ended up happening here is that the value was 6.5%, between 6.5 and 6.78. Nowhere near the 8.47% which is used to justify this property. This is just one example that we have, but I thought it was important to share that.
Thank you. Mr. Sitowski, did you have any questions regarding this rebuttal information?
Well, so that's just one example. You don't have any examples of quote-unquote errors for any of the other properties, right?
Oh, I could go through the list if I can get required, Mr. Stiffless.
Okay, so we're...
Because 51 Aikens is the same owner since 2005. There's no sale recorded here. You know, 35 Winfield, Creative Foods was owner occupied and sold to Banton Holdings. I could go through the list here. Thank you.
So if we look at the other page 20 and page 21 of my brief, I mean, we have other cap rate studies here. The cap rate study by Cushman and Wakefield suggests that industrial properties are the cap rate ranges anywhere from for A properties 6.5 to 7, and B properties 7 to 7.75. Page 21, the cap rate studies show that for industrial properties, single-tenant properties, a high of 7%, and these are investment-grade properties on this page. So are you saying that that using a cap rate of 8%, is out of line based on the problems that this particular building is experiencing?
Well, I've answered the majority of that question before, but I have one other thing to add to that. If this was an investment grade property, Artis REIT wouldn't have purchased it. I have nothing else to add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McBride?
No question.
And I have no questions. And we are just going to take a 5-minute break. And I'd like to call this hearing back to order. We are going to move on to 2061 Logan. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Furlock.
Yep. File number is 194193. Roll number is 070923-88500. Address is 2061 Logan Avenue. For 2020, using the reference date of April 1st, 2018, we have a value of $4,419,000. We have 2 buildings listed here as premises. 1 story, built in 1979. We have a leasable area of 51,228. The subject property is composed of 2 single light industrial buildings comprising of 51,227 square feet of leasable area. Buildings are constructed in '79 in the Winnipeg Ovens Creek Industrial Park and is in close proximity to thoroughfares in the area as well as the International Airport. What we have on page 2 is some general pictures of the property. Just showing where it's, some general pictures of it, where it's located at. And then you can see the strip of buildings that we're dealing with. So page 2 and 3 shows the location of it, where it's located at. I do not have any interior pictures with regard to this property, and I wasn't able to find anything on the web. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing income expense mailer information. We're showing the rent and the recoveries of the operating expenses, the property taxes, and the management fees. Interesting to note in this situation when we're looking at page 4 is when we're looking at the recoveries of management. So they're reporting $20,526 of management fees, but their expenses for management fees is only $15,656. So just something that was of interest to me. What we've done here, on the top of page 5, we're showing that this building had a net operating income of $1,000. And I don't understand all the details with regards to how Artis REIT does their mailers. But what I did want to show this, and I have for your reference here, I did print out the mailers from 2013, 16, 17, and 18. But over here just shows like the general net operating income that they reported over the years. Page 5 shows some of the rents that they have listed here: $6, $5.50, $7.75, $6.25, $6.25. So, you know, just shows all the leases that they have here. What's interesting to note here, 2017, this building had huge vacancy issues. And you could actually see this. So on page 7 here, you're showing that almost nearly half the building was vacated. We have 45% vacancy here. So that's interesting. So what's the history of the vacancy? Because, you know, when a major tenant leaves, there's going to be blips in vacancy. So which is why, as a department, we're always looking at the averages. We're trying to level it out. So just for the record, the vacancy in 2014 was 4.8%. The vacancy in 2015 was 9.7%. It was 0 in 2016. 2017 had the blip of the 45%, which is showing why their net income was so low. Like, because, you know, half the building's vacated, you're going to suffer. But in 2018, and I realize it's post-reference, it's back to 0 again. So the 2017 vacancy of 45% is a blip. And if you did the average over the past 6 years, the vacancy that we would have had is 6%, 6.5%. So looking at page 8, we're showing all the subject property leases that we have in place. showing the range from $5.50 to $7.50. And on page 9, what we're looking at is that the model generated rent here is $6.52. So seems to be reasonable with regards to all of the leases that we have in place here. We're using our model standard of 3.5%. You know, using effective gross income of $322,530, 2% expenses, net operating income of $309,355. So if we look at page 9, and we look at page 5 that I have here, so our model generated is $309,000, and based on the history of the building, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, other than the blip, they had 5 years of significantly profitable incomes here. All this information has been obtained by the mailers here, and I'm under oath here, just to show that. But that's just when we look at the valuation process, you know, we're looking at the big picture. If the vacancy was chronically higher than the 1 year, then I would have made an adjustment to it. So what we've done here is we have the net operating income of $309,355 using a 7% cap rate, being mindful of the fact this building was built in 1979. We come up with a net operating income of $4,419,000. Page 10 shows a list of other properties on King Edward and Omans Creek, all in the airport area right by Logan and Route 90. I feel comfortable with the $6.52 that we've used for this. Our cap rate here that we've used here, so this is a multi-tenanted building, it is a bit older. So if we're looking at it, you know, we have it at 7%, it's still in a good location. It's not in an inner city location, it's a great location, good access. The 7% cap rate that we use seems reasonable. That concludes my formal presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Satowski, questions?
So, you're using a 7% cap rate, even though this building is 40 years old, you feel that,
Well, you asked this question before. When I look at cap rates that we use here, in my analysis in industrial properties, if we look at the average lifespan of a commercial building, say if it's between 40 and 60 years or whatnot. So if we go in 20-year segments, right? So if you look at what we've done as a department, so we have new buildings that are, say, less than 20 years old, that would have a lower cap rate around the 6% level, right? The ones that are between the mid-range, between say 20 and 40 years, those cap rates are around 7%. And those that are significantly older would be, you know, going towards their end of economic life. And those cap rates would be higher than the 7% that we use.
so you're saying 40-year-old building is not near the end of its economic life?
Well, what I'm saying here is, if I wanted to be very general by looking at it, and when we look at all of our industrial properties, the ones that are greater than 40 years old would have a higher cap rate. And if we look at the market evidence, even if you look at your cap rate studies, you know, we're not seeing any industrial cap rates like in the 9% in any of the publicized reports out there.
The other factor that has an impact on the cap rate is the land to building ratio, is that correct?
That is correct. But the point is, land to building ratio is not as significant of an issue here, because a lot of the building here, there's not a lot of trucks going in. If you look at the nature of the building here, land to building.
Well, I have,
let me finish.
sorry, go ahead.
We have 51,000 square feet here. Land to building ratio for industrial properties of 4 to 1 is significant when you're dealing with a lot of trucks moving product in, moving product out. If we're looking at the PIDs that we have here, we have approximately 15 PIDs. Only one of them is 15,000 square feet. I don't think a lot of trucks and a lot of inventory is moving product here. This is essentially it's a flex warehouse standard, but it's almost like a strip mall. And I don't think the parking requirements is as significant here as it would be with other industrial properties.
I just wanted to ask you, on page 3 of your submission, the bottom picture, what does the orange line denote?
That's just those are just general overviews of the property, and I put more merit with regards to the ones that we use with the overhead shots on top of it than we do on other ones, because what happens is, like, when you expand the picture to cover the whole brief, it looks bigger than it really is. But, you know, like I stated before with regards to lot to building ratio, there is a truck here on the bottom of page 3, and my guess is that 15,000 square feet of that property would be for the back portion of it.
So, okay, so if we look at the top picture of page 3, the purple lines, what do those denote?
That's
property. Do those lines denote property?
That's a closer representation of the actual than what's on the bottom of page 3, because we'll come across a lot of situations here in pictometry that we use here in this document. I put more faith on the top picture than the bottom picture, but what happens here, I got better clarity with the bottom picture, which is why I use it.
Okay, so if we look at, if we continue looking at that bottom picture of page 3, near the back building, we notice that the docking system is a little bit different. It's called cross-docking system, is that correct? The radius turn in order to get into the docking would be much higher, is that correct?
Yeah, like I said.
So with the truck trying to dock in those docking facilities there, they would need to probably access the neighboring property, is that correct?
Well, my access isn't the property right beside it also owned by Artist REIT?
It's a different property, right?
Yes, it is, but they have access to it because I don't think.
If somebody else purchased that property, I mean, you still would have to go through adjoining property in order to be able to dock there.
Yeah. Which is not uncommon in these type of properties.
Okay, the question was asked and answered.
Okay, that's good. You made reference to the high vacancy in the reference year.
Yeah.
It was 45%. You didn't make any allowance, you didn't think that any allowance would need to be made for the vacancy rate because of this high?
It was a blip, so when we have buildings that are, when they're 100% full, we don't make a zero vacancy. So I felt that it was close enough to what on the model that we've used, that it was being fair and reasonable for the overall area.
So it was a blip based on past history of this building? But we
On one
know
tenant leaving in 1 year.
Okay, but we don't know what the future would hold, right?
Well,
I mean,
2018 is 0%.
But that's post-reference.
I
right?
understand that, but what I'm looking at is when we're looking at the vacancy, but also in 2016, which isn't post-reference, it's also 0%. And if you have any issues with regard to that, Mr. Les, I have it here.
Okay.
Well, the argument, I guess that one could make, or should make, is that we don't know what's happening post-reference. The fact is that there was a 45% vacancy rate during the reference period, and the department didn't think that an adjustment should be made.
I think I've answered that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
All
been
right.
answered.
Okay. And those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitburn?
So I'm a little bit confused,
Okay.
because I go back to the property number 2 that we looked at, and you got a building the same age, pretty close, 1 year apart. Very poor condition, by evidence given by both of you, appeared to be in very poor condition. Not here, yet you've used a higher cap rate by half a point. You've used 7 instead of 6.5. Can you talk about, I'm not quite understanding.
You know what happens with the models?
Let me just finish,
Okay,
and
no
then,
problem.
okay, I gotta get these thoughts
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Age, size, location, condition talks to cap rate,
Yeah.
typically, from what the assessors
Yeah.
have told us. This one is generating about double the net income, operating income by the looks of it, close to that. Is that a factor? What is the factor here
Age.
that's causing my confusion?
Age, because if I look at the property here, what property was that? It was the other one on Logan?
Owens Creek 100,
Holmes Creek, what?
1980.
It's the 1 year difference.
No.
Yeah, it's where the cutoff is on the cap rate. That's what it goes down to. If Carrie has been exposed to this with banks in the past, is that with regards to when we have building sizes, when we have banks that are lower than 5,000 square feet, they have a lower cap rate than something that's 5,100 square feet. So it's where you draw the line in the sand when you create the model.
I've heard evidence that 1973 is a line, from what I've heard from assessors, but I've asked the question, are there other lines in the sand?
Well, yeah, because
And
there's
Just let me finish, please. Other assessors have said, nope, no other lines. We do agree with 1973, but no other lines. So now you're telling us there is another line called 1980 that would drop the cap rate.
Give me 1 sec here, because I may have it, I may not.
Or sorry, increase the cap rate.
Yeah, so what will happen, yeah, so this is the bottle package. I don't have. So I'll show this here because this is an internal document, but I have no problems showing this aspect here. Okay, and I can't provide this. So we're looking at leasable
Sorry,
areas.
Mr. Froelich.
Yeah.
That's going to be entered in evidence.
Okay, then I'll speak to it. So then I'll speak to it, but we're not entering it as evidence. So what we have here with regards to, for the capitalization rate model, the continuous.
Just for a minute. Is that acceptable? That he talks to us and then doesn't introduce it?
He can give verbal evidence.
Is that verbal? Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Mr.
interrupt you.
Weefel and other agents
Yeah.
provide
Nope,
tons of
no
verbal
problem.
evidence. So what we have here is when we're looking at cap rate studies, similar to what I've stated before, and this is just a little blip on it. For the capitalization rate model, the continuous variables for effective year built and leasable area are converted into the following binary variables. And to answer the question is that different property types will have different cutoffs. So you can't quantify or classify industrial property the same as multifamily, the same as office, the same as retail. But for this stage here, so for the age group component, so we have 5 different classifications for age group. Before 1955 would be what age group? Between 55 and 79 would be a second one. Between 1980 and 94 would be the third one. For the fourth one would be 1995 to 2009. And for the fifth one would be after 2009. So you know how we're sort of talking about effective ages of buildings here. And the other consideration here for industrial properties, because I know for office it's different, but for office the cutoff is 5,000 square feet for banks. So for size group for industrial properties, we have 6,000 and less. We have between 6,000 and 15,000. We have between 15,000 and 40,000. Then 40 to 100,000, and then greater than 100,000. So those are the classifications that we use to answer your question. So, but the thing is people will tell you different information because you're dealing with different properties, right? Because different property types,
Yes.
and the model will be different.
I get that, yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question.
I think you should provide that to us.
Okay.
That's a very valuable information.
Well, yeah, but the point is it's an internal document.
I understand.
And the point is it's something that we have for reference.
So bottom line to my question
Yep.
is, we have a property that's 1 year older, you've increased it in order to drop the value. Cap
Yeah.
rate's gone up to drop the value.
Exactly.
Oh, got it. Thank you for that explanation.
That, my question was along a similar vein. But one way or the other, this is right on the cusp of this.
Exactly. So in 2020, the cap rate will be higher because it'll be 2 years later.
Yeah, okay, that's all I have to do, thanks.
So, Mr. Froelich, you didn't inspect this property, correct?
No, I have not.
Do you know the last time it was inspected? Do you
Oh.
have any notes on that? I'm just wondering if you can speak to condition.
Well, based on the information that we have and what we used for the model rent, it's an average condition because, there's nothing that we would have distinguished. Like, we've had colleagues of mine do BA adjustments for it. And so, we've had some permits, we're showing that master group moved in, but we have no pictures on file. We've had just various inquiries, but no pictures, unfortunately.
Okay. And I'm just going to ask in regards to the vacancy again. So you had said when you averaged out the 4 years, it came out to 6%.
Yep.
So it was a judgment call on your part not to adjust it on page
Yep,
9?
exactly. Yep.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you don't know the exact reason for the vacancy? I'm
My,
assuming?
if I'm looking at it here right now, and if I look at the history, is because I do believe that one tenant moved out, or maybe it was, because some of these tenants, they own multiple spaces
Right.
within them, and I think what ended up happening here, see, so it's actually on the mailer in 2017. So K-Touch Heaters Company relocated to different property at the end of July 2017. So this is actually very interesting here. So they had 15,000 square feet, which is actually 2/3 of the reason why. So when they vacated that property, right, so in July of 2017, by 2018 it was already a 0% vacancy. And so we had another lease here that ended of 7,500 square feet that ended in April 2013. And so if this property was currently vacated, then I would have been able to, if it was currently vacated, I would have been able to find some information on the website advertising their space. Subsequently, for 2018, there's nothing in 2019 showing that they're leasing all this area. So my guess is that,
Okay,
you know, the vacancy is no longer an issue with this property.
thank you. Mr. Sapolsky, if you would like to give us your presentation?
Thank you. So I'd like to begin with page 3 of the presentation. And again, the main arguments are with respect to the vacancy allowance, reinstallment of the non-recoverable expenses, and capitalization rate. Now, you have heard that there at the reference year, there was a 45% vacancy in this particular building, and as Mr. Follick had mentioned, a significant tenant had moved out, and the tenant that moved out was located. If you take a look at the pictures at the back of the building, where those the dock, I guess they're called sawtooth docking system, where the docks are at an angle, and the tenant had moved out, and the owner had to invest significant amount of money to repurpose that particular space.
Sorry, Mr. Sapolsky, which page are you referencing?
Well, first of all, I'm referencing, talking about the picture, which is the best picture to view probably is on page 3 of the assessor's brief.
So you're talking about that area in the bottom picture in the top left corner?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So that
Page 3,
3 of your
Three
brief.
of your
Yeah.
brief.
okay, no problem.
And so the tenant in that particular space moved out, and as I said, the owner had to repurpose. He had to remove some demising walls in order to make that space rentable. And if you take a look at page, and I apologize for going back and forth. If you take a look at page 16 and 17 of our brief, you'll notice that shows the space that was one of the spaces that was vacated, and that particular space had to be demised, as you said, or altered. I'm sorry, altered. There was a wall between. I'm not sure how to word this, but there was a. If you take a look at the picture, would you mind looking at my brief here? There was a wall here, and so the wall had to be removed in order to make the space a little bit more attractive. And if you turn to page 18 of the brief, it spells out what had to be invested into this particular space in order to make it more attractive. And one of the things is in the bullet forms near about 2/3 of the way down, it says demolish warehouse demising wall, for example. So there quite a bit of work had to go in, and on page 19 it quantifies the amount of money that had to be paid towards the cost of the landlord's work, which is around $13,000 plus GST. So at the time of the reference here, there was, as we had indicated, there was 45% vacancy in this particular building, and we feel that as a result of that, the vacancy for this building should be increased to 10%. And also we'd like to reinstate the non-recoverable expenses, and we feel that 8.25% capitalization rate is more appropriate for a number of reasons. A is the age of the building, B is the land to building ratio. So if we, as I mentioned earlier, because of the way the loading docks in the back are situated, it doesn't allow room to access those docks unless you access the adjoining property. So those are the reasons why we thought that 8.25% is a more appropriate rate, and of course it falls in line with our cap rate studies, and we talked about our cap rate studies before. You know, the average is 8.29, but because of the age and the lower land to building ratio, we feel 8.5 is more appropriate. If you look at Cushman and Wakefield's study for Winnipeg, it ranges up to a high of 7.75%.
What page are we on?
Page 24. Sorry, page 24 of my brief. And page 25 also, this is a cap rate study of investment grade properties, and it shows for industrial, it shows it goes up to 7% for investment grade properties. But because this property is older, the land to building ratio is lower, and because of the way the loading docks are situated, it poses problems for trucks being able to access those loading docks. If there was a fence on the property line, or if that particular property was owned by a different owner, that would pose a lot more significant problems. But the way it is right now, it still poses significant problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Pollack?
Yeah. On page 3, you're stating a reported net income of $260,509. That's significantly lower than the 6-year history that we have for this property, that I provided on this property on page 5. Can you explain why it's so much lower?
Well, again, we're using models. Is that, I mean, you're now zeroing in on what's actually happening with the problem, but the city has been using models, and we're using models as well.
Okay, so, but our model represented a value of $309,000, and yet you're using the same model rent that we're using. You're using the same model cap rate that we're using. The your only adjustment is the 5% and 8.25%, correct?
And we're asking for a higher vacancy allowance.
Okay. Is anywhere on any of your stated reports showing an 8.25% cap rate on your properties?
No, but again, we feel because it's an older property, because the problem posed by that the docking system that they have, and the fact that there's a narrow, the land is quite narrow there. We feel that at 8.25 would be more appropriate for this particular property.
You had mentioned that the owner paid $13,000 to adjust the property to make it more accommodating for the new tenant in that space, correct?
That's it's shown on page 19.
So, using $13,000 over the total rent of $334,000 is only 3.8%. Would you call that significant?
You mean in terms of the money value?
The money value, yeah. Like
Yeah.
you stated that they had to make some adjustments to it.
Mhm.
Usually, isn't it a common place that adjustments are made to
Well, they had to-
functionality of properties when a new tenant comes in?
Yeah, in this particular case, they had to remove walls, they had to
Okay.
replace HVAC systems.
Okay, so would that be reflected in the market rent for that property? All the changes that they've made?
The market rent?
The market rent, so
Or
there's a
the
new, there's a
actual
new
rent.
tenant that came in, and, you know, and you're using our model rent, which is fine. But, you know, what's the actual rent for this property that was vacated, that's currently occupied?
Okay, so that's post-reference, I don't know.
Well, but do you know when the lease took place
It
for the
was,
new property?
it was post-reference.
Okay, but do you know when, like, how close the post-reference, was it towards the
Uh,
end of 2018, was it right on the cusp?
I'm not gonna lie, but or mislead you, but I think that is somewhere in the third quarter.
In the third quarter?
Yep.
Yeah, so you didn't look at the 2018 mailer for this property?
No.
Okay. Okay. Would you know if the new rent would be higher or lower?
I don't know.
Okay. It was higher, and,
Okay,
But
this is question, thank you.
okay, sorry,
again, it's post-reference, so.
Yeah,
fair enough. That's my question. Property value dropped by 18% from what was in 2018. Was the 2018 value taken to the municipal board?
It was reduced by the board to the $3,729,000.
Okay, and were you happy with that value?
I wasn't around.
Okay.
I'm
Do you know why it wasn't taken to the municipal board?
I have no idea.
Okay. But do you have any economic indicators showing that it would justify an 18% drop in value from 2018 to 2020?
Well, one indicator would be the vacancy rate.
Okay.
You know, so like I said, 45% of that the space was unoccupied at that time.
No other questions?
thank you. Mr. Whitbread.
I'm good, thank you.
So this building doesn't have a chronic vacancy, it had a vacancy and some tenant improvements that had to be made, correct?
As I understand, yes.
Yeah, that's all I had, thanks.
And I have no questions. We'll move on to our last property at 1832 King Edward.
File number is 194189. Roll number is 070924-58500. Address is 1832 King Edward. And the value that we have for this property is $6,525,000. There's 3 buildings as a part of this property, 8 premises. Age ranges from 1977 to 1979. We have a leasable area for this property of 73,819. What I've included here is top of page 2, shows the view that you would see off of Route 90. And on the bottom of page 2 would show an overhead view of it. The bottom of page 2 is taken off of a Collier's report. Page 3 shows the overall pictures of it, just from where it is above. There was a recent advertisement showing that there's some spaces for lease. It is post-reference. But I do this to show the pictures of what it looks like, the trucking capabilities of it, and just an overview of what it is. Just to follow up on Mr. Whitbread had said, this property was also a part of that other sale that we had for the $23,341,000. Once again, on page 6, we're showing the income expense mailer that has been completed, showing that they're getting rental income for signage, parking, And they're showing recoveries for operating expenses, property tax, management fees. You've got the expenses listed here. Showing the rent roll that we have here, we got a rent of from, on this page, from $6 to $6.50 on page 7. And some more from $5.50 to $6.75. Being consistent with regards to it, on page 9 shows the mailers that we have listed here, showing that range from $5.50 to $7. And on page 10 shows the flex warehouse, showing that our model generated rents that we have for this property is $6.68. Using 3.5% vacancy, 2% expenses, shortfall of $375, we come up with a net operating income of $456,746, which is just below what was reported on page 7 on the 2000 income expense mailer. And similar to other properties that we've had, just some comparables showing why I feel comfortable with the model rent that we use of $6.68. That concludes my formal presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Stokowski?
So, Mr. Frolick, you have indicated that this property consists of 3 buildings.
That's correct.
And if we take a look at page 2 and 3, page 2, let's say the bottom page here, there's one building that fronts onto King Edward, and the other 2 buildings are in the back, right?
Yep.
Of the property. So, would you not think that those buildings back in the back, behind the one that's fronting onto King Edward, would affect the cap rate, or would affect the rental rate? Would affect the value, the overall value?
Yeah, exposure is important, and that probably explains why some of the rents are $5.50 or a bit lower, and the other ones are higher.
So exposure, so that wouldn't reflect on your cap rate that you would use?
Like I discussed before, everything affects the cap rate and the market valuation.
But in this
The
case,
subject property has a 0% vacancy, that would have an effect on the cap rate as well.
The building's over 40 years old, that wouldn't affect the cap rate? Because you use
Which is
cap
why
rate of 7%.
we have a 7% cap rate and not a 6% cap rate.
Did you also know that this particular property is on the province of Manitoba contaminated list?
Yeah, and usually with regards to these type of properties, that won't affect the market rates or the value for it.
Would it have an impact on the cap rate?
Not really for this type of property. We've had numerous gas stations that have been recertified, that have been...
This is not a gas station, however.
No, what I'm saying though, is a gas station would be actually much worse than the contamination on here. And maybe even at one point, this may have been a gas station at one point, but right now what I'm saying though, is there's enough market evidence with regards to land sale values of redeveloped properties that have contaminated issues that does not affect the cap rate.
So the fact that this particular property has 3 strikes against it on the contamination list, has 2 buildings in the back somewhere, old, that didn't go into your consideration?
One of your comparables that you used earlier today on 1301 Keniston has significant buildings that are not off of Route 90, and that doesn't affect the cap rate on that. So you're overlooking at the overall economic units. You're not looking. If it was 3 different roll numbers on this property for a different area, then you could probably look at it. But this is one economic unit, and I don't believe that's a factor. And the cap rate, we have adjusted for the age of it. So it's still a very desirable property. If it wasn't a desirable property, it wouldn't be owned by Artistry.
So what are the type of units that are located in the building fronting onto King Edward? Would they be more retail oriented businesses?
You know what? Just bear with me here for a fact, because yeah, I can't read what are the front tenants. You know what the front tenants are?
Well, I know one of them is a fireplace retailer.
Okay, you know the name of that? So we have
Perry Fireplaces.
Prairie fireplaces, okay, so I got Prairie fireplaces, yeah, they're getting $6, but that was the lease that was signed in 2005.
Yeah. But I guess the question is, in general, businesses that front onto Main Streets usually are more retail versus businesses that would be located in back buildings somewhere?
Yes, that's a fair comment to make.
And retail businesses usually pay more in rent, I would think?
Yeah.
And a building that's located on a main road would
Yeah.
have, probably, everything else being equal, would have a lower cap rate?
Well, yeah, and the thing is, what's important to realize though, is with one of the properties here, so we have this property that you've stated here, which is 9,000 square feet, which is probably 50% of the overall whole. This is a 15-year lease. It's a step-up lease that has taken place over 15 years. So with that taking place, if you got long-term tenants with zero vacancy, that actually dropped the cap rate.
What about, but you're saying the fact that it's contaminated, it wouldn't?
No, not at all. There's enough evidence in the marketplace with regards to contamination that hasn't impacted land sales.
And again, just to reconfirm, you're using model-generated rents and cap rates?
That's correct.
All right, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitburn?
Mhm. So, do you know when the contamination designation was given to this?
I
building?
have no clue whatsoever.
You can't say whether it was pre-207?
Miss Les would know that better than I would. If you could, yeah. Les, you know what the
You'll-
contamination?
We'll bring it into his
Yeah.
presentation,
He'll-
I'm
he'll-
sure.
he'll-
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not know, sorry.
That building in the back, number 3 building,
Yep.
was in the back pre-207, could one imagine that? That didn't change in the last 12 years.
No.
So Artis bought the building, the 3 buildings as part of the parcel,
And
knowing
no-
that building was in the back.
And knowing that it was contaminated,
Well,
probably.
we'll get to that when we get
Yeah.
to Les's
Yep.
evidence. Okay. Thanks, no further questions.
Thank you.
So I'm just confirming that this was all model-driven, because you, in your responses there, you were talking about that it had 0% vacancy, so that would affect the cap rate. But that, in this particular case, it's got, you've put your regular vacancy loss on this and the
Oh, yeah,
regular
for
cap
sure,
rate.
yep.
Okay. So this hasn't been adjusted?
No, I'm just
Yeah.
basing it on the 2017
Yeah.
mailer, which would affect the cap rate, right? If we were looking at how the building is performing.
Okay, that's all I had, thanks.
And I have no questions, thank you. Mr. Zatowski, you could give us your presentation?
Thank you, so I'll begin with page 3. And we accept the model-driven rent of $6.68. We accept the vacancy allowance of 3.5. We're asking the non-recoverable expenses to be reinstalled 5%, and we're asking for the cap rate to be increased to 7.5%. And using these parameters, the value that we arrive at is $5,771,000, and we ask the board to decrease the assessed value to that amount. Now, this particular building is over 40 years old, or about 40 years old in total. It consists of 3 buildings. So, one, of course, fronting onto King Edward, and 2 other buildings in the back, behind the one that's fronting King Edward. The land to building ratio is under 3, 2.83 to be exact. Because of these factors, because of the fact that this is contaminated, and so I understand it's been contaminated for years and years and years. I have a report that was printed off from the Manitoba Contaminated List site. And it doesn't indicate when it became contaminated. It's just on the contamination list. And would you want me to submit this list, or?
I'm sorry, did you say it's not on the list?
No. It doesn't show on the list when it was contaminated, but it is on the list.
You want to, yes, if you wish to admit it.
So it's on page 3, highlighted in yellow.
Sorry.
So, I'm not gonna bore you anymore with our cap rate studies. I think we've discussed that at length. They're the same cap rate studies that were presented in the other briefs. Also, wanted to make sure that the board is aware that in 2018, there was a board-ordered reduction for this property from $6,317,000 to $5,866,000. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Froelich?
So just to confirm, you're looking for $100,000 less than the 2018 value?
Yes.
And that's based on the contamination of this property?
Well, it's based on various factors that are shown on page 3. You know, the reinstallation of the non-recoverable expenses, increase in the capitalization rate to 7.5% because of the fact that this property is contaminated, because it's old. So we asked for a cap rate of 7.5%.
Can you not say that most industrial properties within the city of Winnipeg are probably have one form of contamination or another?
I can't say that. I don't know. I feel like you could take a look through the list. I mean, there are numerous properties that are on this list. This particular one is, and we feel that the value is affected by the fact that it's on the list and by the fact that it's contaminated.
I have no other questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
So, you made the statement, it's been contaminated for years and years. Would that say it was contaminated before 2007? Do you know that?
I don't know exactly when it became contaminated or it was contaminated. I just know that speaking with Mr. Sturley, that he did indicate that it has been contaminated for some time.
Okay, so would you surmise from that then it was contaminated at the time artists purchased this parcel of land, including these 3 buildings on this property?
You know, I don't know. I can't answer that question. And I'm sure, you know, artists read. I mean, they own many properties in the city of Winnipeg, and when they investigate a possible purchase of property, they investigate a lot of things. Yes.
They would know it was contaminated.
I would think so. Yes.
Yeah.
I would
So,
hope so.
knowing it was contaminated, can you answer the question in terms of whether it affected the market value of the property at the time?
Possibly could have, yes.
Now, looking at the list you provided us, if I just could ask one question about that. You've given us a list that includes items only up to BA and BD in the alphabet. That would say to me that BC through ZZ would denote a huge number of properties beyond these.
Yeah, and I just printed these out to show that 1832 King Edward is on.
I understand that, but it does come back to the point made by the assessor that many buildings in the city are contaminated through some form or another.
Well, properties are, you know, land is contaminated.
Did I say buildings? I meant properties. But it would say that BC, or even BB to ZZ, could include hundreds of properties, because you've given us at least 100 here. Is that true?
Well, I think if I remember, there were 19 pages of on this list. So I didn't want to print out all 19 pages. I just because I was looking for this particular property, and you know, I wanted to make sure that we were aware that this particular property.
So that would be hundreds of properties. Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Do you know what the specific contamination is?
As I understand, there was gas or oil contamination on this property. I don't know fully.
Soil
but
contamination?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, and I have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Foley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flinsky.
Thank you.
This hearing is concluded.
Are you gonna give us a,
Sure, absolutely.